Chapter 21, Fearless. I pulled the book out from under my shirt and informed the guys Mr. Emerson's whispering words about the Tree of Knowing. It wasn't much, but enough to have a lead. Between Alex informing me to find my soul sisters and what he'd mentioned, I explained to them the tree was going to show me the way to defeat Orion. Before we got into the car, Evan reviewed the plan. I say we head back to camp and pack up for a long road trip, Evan said. It's roughly a 34-hour drive to get to this tree. We could rotate shifts. Danny and Max can ride along with us. We could take her Jeep and the Camaro. Once we get what we need from the tree, you guys can leave from there to head back home. That sounds like a great plan and all, but won't you need Mike and me to help defeat Dappa? I asked. It's all right, Zeke said. You can just tell us what the tree showed you and we could take care of the rest. Why did I have a feeling this wasn't going to work, or this wouldn't work? I sank into the deep contemplation, clueless about how this was going to play out. Let's help them, Amber, and then we can drive home from there, Mike implied. I nodded. Another road trip it is. Mike drove us back to camp. Evan fell asleep with his head resting on his balled-up jacket behind me, and Zeke was staring out the window with his earbuds in, blaring music so loud we could hear it up front. I was 3 chapters in reading Fearless, and it had grasped my attention. The story had information about Electra's sisters and seemed to line up with my recent memories. How are you not carsick? Mike asked. I'd be nauseous. I closed the book and laid it on my lap, completely ignoring his question. This story is information about me. How can that be possible? I questioned, staring out the window. Info on Amber or Electra? Well, Electra, my soul, I said. Greek mythology is legends and myths. I mean, how can a man I just met for the first time today write a fantasy novel about my new memories? None of this makes sense. Nothing about us makes sense, Mike said. Every camper at Camp 47 is a star child with magical powers, and you are a starseed demigoddess from another planet. Wait, does that make you an alien? He asked with a playful smile. Ha ha, very funny, Michael, I replied with a heavy groan. Just because my soul was a goddess, it doesn't make me an alien. Hey, it could be worse, Mike explained. We could be werewolves that turn on full moons or vampires that feed on human blood, he said as he clenched his teeth together, pretending to have fangs, and reached with his right hand out from my neck while snarling. Come on, let me suck your blood. I want a taste. I shoved his hand off and tried my hardest not to laugh. Mike's sense of humor and charming smile got me every time. Okay, just keep your eyes on the road, please. Clouds became dark and a gentle rain fell onto the windshield. He flipped on the wipers, which made an annoying screeching sound with every wipe. I stared at the water gliding over the passenger window. Anything interesting or possibly helpful in the book? I glanced down at the book cover. I only read the first 3 chapters. The first 2 started with the story of the beautiful 7 sisters of Pleiades. The sisters' names were Maya, Alcyone, Tegeti, Asterope, also known as Sterope, Selene, and Merope, we know as Alex's soul, and the last sister, my soul, Electra. The sisters live on a planet called Pleiades, in a whole other solar system from ours, but resources similar to Earth with land, water, and life. But instead of humans, they have gods, goddesses, and magical creatures. The book doesn't feel like a fantasy fiction as my memories line up with what I read. Interesting, Mike said. Maybe his uncle's a star child or a prophet. Maybe. If this world exists, how else can he know about it to write it in such detail? Tell me more about the book, Mike insisted. The family lives in the forests of Arcadia. This lies just outside of their capital called Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus is the legendary home of Olympian gods, similar to stories we were told. But it gets interesting. Titan Atlas, the sea nymph, and the sea nymph Pleione are the parents of the 7 sisters. Pleione, the mother of the girls, was the 7th daughter of her mother, Tethys, the goddess of freshwater. Electra was the 7th daughter of Pleione, making my soul known as the 7th sister of a 7th sister. Now, what exactly that means for my soul, I wasn't sure, but it seemed to be relevant somehow. The third chapter talks about Artemis, the god of hunt and moon. She lives on Mount Olympus with her brother Apollo. Artemis was very close to the seven sisters. Many men were attracted to the girl's radiant beauty, so she would watch over them, protecting them from the many lookers. Artemis taught them to be strong and how to hunt. But there was one sister in particular that she was very protective over. Mike looked over at me. Electra? Yep, just like in my new memories, it's like every time I read over the name Artemis in the book, I feel connected to her somehow, as if I've known her all my life. But I don't know. I took a deep breath inside. Maybe the more you read, something relevant in the story could help us, Mike indicated. I guess anything is possible, I said. I'll read more on our long trip to the Tree of Knowing. I'm curious to know why Artemis is extremely protective over Electra. We sat in silence for about 5 minutes as I laid my forehead on the cool window. I could tell Mike had something on his mind, but wasn't comfortable saying it out loud. He tapped in my thoughts. Amber, I was thinking, what if we moved down here? I tapped back into his thoughts. To live at camp? Surprised by this, since he hated the hot weather, I shook my head. I don't think it's a good idea, Mike. Our lives are back home. We have established jobs, and our parents aren't that far from us. And what about our friends? But we wouldn't have to hide who we were if we lived at the camp. We can help protect the team. Besides, the baby will be hard to hide in the world we live in. If it's as powerful as Jasper thinks it is, we need to keep him hidden and safe at Camp 47. Teach him to choose good. His eyes beamed, hoping I truly consider this. It was written all over his face. Remember what you say? We aren't just living, we are existing. We need to prepare our future for this little one. He had to use my own words against me. Mike was so cute when he tried to convince me of something important to him. But he did have a valid point. Who knew how powerful this baby was going to be? Trying to hide him or her in a world where powers didn't exist could be extremely hard to camouflage. Mike continued to plead his case through our thoughts. He kept his left hand on the wheel and then reached over with his right hand and placed it on my stomach. I took a deep breath and sighed. I guess it's something we should consider, I said out loud. Consider what? Evan asked. I was so deep in thought the conversation that I completely forgot Evan and Zeke were in the back. I glanced in the side mirror to see Zeke remove his earbuds. Mike and I looked at each other. He took a deep breath and then swallowed hard. We are considering moving to Camp 47 after we defeat Dappa, Mike proclaimed. Really? Evan asked excitedly. I think it's a great idea, Zeke chimed in. Then I remembered the connection between Zeke and me over the past few days. That could make things complicated with all of us living there unless we could get it figured out before the potential move. We are considering, guys. We have to work some things out. I gave Mike an approving smile. But it would be a safe place to raise the baby. Evan reached forward and placed one hand on each of our shoulders. Well, we would be honored to have you and your family come live with us at Camp 47 and join the SAP crew. Evan looked over at Zeke. Wouldn't we, Zeke? Absolutely. You both are the most powerful twin flames we know. Y'all would be a great asset to our team. Thanks, guys, Mike said. Camp was almost near. The rain had just about ended. Mike parked the Camaro and we unloaded the equipment out of the trunk. As we all walked through the forest, we faintly heard screams echoing through the trees and the smell of something burning in the forest air. It was coming from the camp. This couldn't be good. We ran as fast as we could. The sounds became louder and the closer we got. My heart was thumping. The anticipation of what we were going to see heightened my fear. Evan and Zeke were in the lead. The doorways to the camp were wide open and both guard posts were empty. This was bad. Fire was coming from the laundry area. Danny was taking buckets of water from the barrel, attempting to put it out. Zeke and Mike dashed over to assist her. Max was helping Nora as she sat on the ground with a bloody nose. He had large, sad eyes. Evan hustled over toward them to see what happened. I stood there in shock, staring at the mess and destruction. The camp had been destroyed. It appeared as if a tornado came through, picked everything up, and just dropped it wherever. Things were burning. Campers were trying to clean up, and they could clean up what they could, while others attended to the wounded. The place they had called home had been compromised. My legs went numb, and my feet were glued to the ground. I was helpless, sad, angry, and scared all at once. My hormones were all over the place since I'd found out about the baby, making it harder to control my emotions. Danny and the boys were just finishing putting out the fire. She turned around and we made eye contact. I saw anger written all over her face, and it appeared to be directed at me. She stormed at me as Zeke reached for her arm and missed. Her boots stomped on the ground with every step, and I was stuck watching her every move. Her face flooded with anger, eyebrows pointing inward. She barked while pointing her index finger at me. "This is all your fault," Danny shouted in my face while taking both of her hands and shoving my shoulders back, causing me to fall backward onto the dirt. I was no longer frozen, and my bottom felt sore from landing on the hard ground. She completely caught me off guard. I felt my eyes glowing with flames of fire. Danny stepped toward me. Without thinking, my body went into defense mode. I threw my hand at her, and the energy left my hand and struck her straight in the chest. She flew back into into the arms of Zeke. She shrieked in pain. It probably hurt worse than her shoving me on the ground, since the force was fairly hard, like a 250-pound boxer taking a punch at full swing. The rage flowed through me, unable to control the feelings. I pulled myself up and take a step in her direction. At the same time, she pulled herself up off of Zeke, stepping toward me with glowing eyes. Her fist clenching in a ball like she was going to take a swing. My hand was ready to throw her more energy at her. Sparks of orange trickled out of my fingers. I thought, "Bring it, bitch." But suddenly, Evan stepped in the middle of both of us, throwing his hands in the air. "Enough, you two," Evan shouted as he used his telekinetic abilities to lift both of us in the air. I felt stuck, floating 2 feet off the ground. "Put me down," Danny shouted. He glared at Danny while keeping both of his hands in the air. "I will put you down if you can calmly explain what is going on with you two." After about a 10-second awkward stare down between Danny and me, we both nodded our heads. Our eyes were no longer glowing, and my hands stopped sparking. He released his energy, and we both dropped to the ground. I could have easily released myself before he did, but I respected what Evan was trying to do. Mike helped me up as Zeke helped Danny. "Well, go on, explain," Evan demanded as he removed a tube from his belt, quickly swallowing some water. The entire camp was staring at us at this point. "First of all, Alex is dead because of you." "Danny," Zeke shouted. Oh no, she wasn't blaming me for this. "I didn't kill her," I replied angrily. "No, but you didn't save her," Danny snapped. Evan put his hand up. "Do not blame Amber for what Jasper did." Danny took a deep breath. "Fine, but this," she moved her hand in a circular motion, "this is because of her." She pointed back at me. "Me?" I questioned. "Yes, Dappa found us. They came for you." Oh no. I placed my right hand on my stomach. "The baby," I whispered. "Yeah, the baby. They came for it," Danny snapped. "But how did they find the place with the camp surrounded by the datura flowers?" I asked. "Well, Jasper's half Star Child," Zeke explained. "Was he with them?" Sasha shook her head. "No, just 10 trackers." Evan chimed in. "One of them could have been a brainwashed Star Child. He must have used one of our kind against us. That's the only other possible way he could have found us." Danny continued her rant. "Those trackers barged in when we least expected it. They demanded to hand you over, and when we said you were near, they didn't believe us. They searched and destroyed the place." Danny looked at Evan. "They tore through everything, burning stuff. They couldn't find her. They began hitting Nora, hoping one of us would cave. No one did, so they gave us until the end of the week to give her up. They will be back in 5 days." Evan ran his hand through his short brown hair, seemingly thinking hard of a solution to this mess. "Well," he contemplated, "we need to get to the Tree of Knowing, and fast. Since they won't be back for 5 days, that should be enough time for us to head out to Camp West, find the tree, get the information, and head back here in time to destroy them. We won't be able to fly at the risk of Dappa finding us. Driving is—" Danny interrupted his plan, having no respect for his authority. "You think this tree is going to give her the information we need to defeat Jasper?" "It's the only lead we have, so yes, I do," Evan snapped. "Do you have a better idea to defeat Dappa? Because everything else we have done so far had filled up our cemetery. Alex died because she acted on impulse. So unless you want to join her, I suggest you help us find this tree and end this bullshit once and for all." She pressed his buttons with her attitude. That was the maddest I'd seen him. His face was glowing red and his teeth were clenched. Danny crossed her arms, sighed, and rolled her eyes like a teenage girl getting upset from being scolded by her father. He shut her up real quick. Evan moved his hand through his hair again and placed it on his hip. He took a deep breath while trying to compose himself. "We leave tonight," he said. "We'll drive straight through, taking shifts. It's a 34-hour trip with brief rest stops. Zeke, Amber, and Mike can ride in the Camaro. Max and I will be in the Jeep. With Nora having a rough beating, I can't make her go." Danny glanced over at Nora, who was covered in blood. She slowly stepped forward. "Hey, I'm sorry about my outburst. Let me help." Evan nodded his head. "Fine, but you follow my lead. You understand that. Even if you don't like my rules, I can't have you stepping out of line." "Yes, sir," Danny agreed. Evan returned his focus to everyone else. "Let's get this place cleaned up and everyone man their posts. Amber and Mike, you can please heal those in need." "No problem, boss," Mike said. The crowd of campers dispersed as they pieced back the camp the best they could. Mike walked over to heal the bullet wound on the young boy who guarded the tower. I redid my hair and pulled it all back in a ponytail as I headed over to Nora to assist her in healing. "Here, let me help." Her face was swollen from the punches that her right eye couldn't even open. I placed my hand over her bloody face. Within seconds, she was as good as new. Once Max could see she was well, he joined the other campers with the cleanup. "Thank you," Nora said as she wiped the blood off her face with a rag. "No, thank you for not telling them where I was," I said, staring down at the ground, feeling awful. "That's what family does." She smiled genuinely. "You're family now." "Thanks. I still feel this is all my fault. Ever since I got here, nothing has gone right. It must be bad luck." Her smile didn't change. "Because they were looking for you is the reason we are all alive. They could have killed us, but they didn't," she said. "I guess. Never really thought of it that way." "I'm an optimist," Nora said. "It's what keeps me strong, always trying to find the positive side." She sounded a lot like me. I needed to have faith because being an optimist was who I was, and I didn't want to lose myself through these crazy times. Hopefully this tree had the answers. I was tired and exhausted from the past few days. I was ready for this to be over. Tonight was going to be a lengthy trip, but all I could say was one thing. I was glad I didn't have to ride with Danny.